course, lots of issues there in the news, of course, the Trayvon Martin tragedy, the George Zimmerman decision, also the voting rights case decided by the Supreme Court. Also here today, we have Bishop T.D. Jakes as well. We'll be talking about images in media. Round of applause for Bishop. So we look forward to having a great conversation and your participation. So we want to kick things right off right now when it comes to giving you a roundup, if you will, on the Trayvon Martin case. Here we go.
Hey, we've had some break-ins in my neighborhood, and there's a real suspicious guy. It's Retreat View Circle. The best address I can give you is 111 Retreat View Circle. This guy looks like he's up to no good.
It's a story that no one can stop talking about, the shooting of Trayvon Martin.
Their message is clear. They want justice for Trayvon Martin. They want to see George Zimmerman arrested.
Since the law justified homicides in Florida have jumped threefold. 20 other states have similar laws, but Florida's is seen as the most extreme.
I think the hoodie is as much responsible for Trayvon Martin's death as George Zimmerman was.
There's just 11 days until the start of George Zimmerman's second-degree murder trial.
Jack, we've been following this case for a while now. You've been here a bunch. I just keep getting more confused. What is that telling me about this case?
In and for Seminole County, Florida. State of Florida versus George Zimmerman. Verdict: we, the jury, find George Zimmerman not guilty.
Breaking news in the Crenshaw district, where a peaceful gathering in Leimert Park to protest the Zimmerman verdict is overshadowed when a group of mostly younger people starts marching that soon runs wild in the streets of South L.A.
When Trayvon Martin was first shot, I said that this could have been my son. Another way of saying that is Trayvon Martin could have been me 35 years ago.
Didn't see a TV One clip. Somebody's going to get fired. All right now I want to bring out Florida State Representative Alan Williams to talk about the Stand Your Ground law, what's happening here in Florida. Give it up for Representative Alan Williams. All right then. Also, is Eric Deggans here?
No music.
Tampa Times? No music? You got to request music. Alphas know how to request music, Kappas don't. Take a seat.
Oh, here we go.
It's all good. Representative Williams and I go back. I met his son at the Delta Convention in 2010, had a Kappa shirt on, and have a photo of his son throwing the Alpha sign. He is still upset. All right then. So good to see you, man. Let's get right into it. We've seen lots of focus on the Stand Your Ground law, and one of the things that jumps out is that you have the Dream Defenders in Tallahassee right now. They are occupying the state capitol. Right. They want to see a special session to vote on this law. And all of a sudden, you now are seeing some traction, if you will, from some officials who say, we might want to look at this. Give us the latest on what's happening.
So, obviously, Florida was the first in the country to pass the Stand Your Ground law, the Shoot First law, back in 2005. A bill that was pushed by ALEC around the country. And right now, obviously with the outcome of the state of Florida versus Zimmerman, we are in a very tough state of turmoil. The Dream Defenders, as Roland talked about, they are out in the state capitol as we speak every night, I think day 17, sleeping in, sitting in, had their own session because the governor wouldn't call one, had their own session a few days ago. And now they're going through committee the process, and they're going to present their final bill in a few days. But we, as Roland said, we have had some traction. The Speaker of the House, Will Weatherford, the youngest speaker in the country right now. So he understands this society of young folks. I mean, because he's one of them. Has provided some glimmer of hope. Has provided some leadership on this where we had none from our governor that said we do need to at least look at revisions to the law. Can we get a full-out repeal? That would be great. But can we get some revisions, some changes? We think we can, because we know that the state attorneys, the public defenders, the chiefs of police, the sheriffs, they all say that this law has not made their job easier.
Well, see, and that's what I don't quite understand. Typically, when you have politicians and they look at individuals who are in law enforcement, police chiefs, prosecutors, they typically will listen to them. If you look at what happens in Washington, you have politicians who will always say to the president, listen to the generals. In this case, you have folks in the legal profession who are saying, we don't like this law because it makes our job tougher. So why in the world is it so difficult to have some revisions here in Florida? Is it because Republicans are dominating in terms of the legislature? Is that the issue?
Well, I think what has happened is the narrative. And I think why it's so important that we're here at the National Association of Black Journalists is the narrative that's drawn around it. So many times folks want to say it's about gun control, it's about our Second Amendment rights. They want to go back and, hold up the Bill of Rights right next to, to the Bible and say, you're not going to take either one. It's not about gun control. It's about self-control. And so as we continue to say, look, to our brothers and sisters who want to carry their guns and go out and hunting, we want to go, we hunt too. We just don't hunt, young men who are walking home minding their own business. And so we have to be very careful, because it's not about gun control. It's about keeping our communities safe. And, Marion Hammer, who is the president of the NRA here in Florida, I've met with her. We're going to continue to meet with her. It's about dialogue. If we can get that dialogue to say to the supporters of Stand Your Ground, let's keep our community safe. We know Tampa Bay Times did a very extensive story that showed us that our streets are not safer from justifiable homicides post Stand Your Ground law being implemented, right? And so we know that something's not right. And if our streets aren't safe, then we're doing something wrong, and we got to change it.
The Dream Defenders is a group of young folks, reminiscent of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. They have gotten some national attention.
Sure.
Other issues, I think, have overshadowed in terms of what they are doing. And what jumps out the most is that they occupied the governor's office. He sent an aide to meet with them. They said, no, we want to actually meet with the governor. They actually forced his hand there as well. What's the rationale the governor has given why he won't call a special session to even allow the bill to be considered?
Simply put, he believes in Stand Your Ground. Here's an individual, and I have all due respect for the office of the governor, but here's an individual who has only been in the state of Florida maybe now 8 years. We got some students who probably...
He was a healthcare executive.
Right.
And then moved to Florida.
And so elections have consequences, right? Now we have someone who was not even around, wasn't even in the state of Florida, I don't believe, in 2005. If it was, he was just getting here when this law was passed. And he's evolved, right? He's evolved on certain things. He evolved on Obamacare. When he first came in, he was calling Obamacare, it was like a four-letter word to him. But now he embraced it. He opened his arms. He gave Obamacare the same kind of hug that Charlie Crist gave President Obama when he was governor. But he is not evolving on Stand Your Ground. He is not evolving on this because, again, the narrative is it's about the Second Amendment. It's about gun rights.
Your critics will say, look, this is far too much attention being applied to this one case, to this particular law. But when you look at what took place in Florida, what Alec did, this led to the passage of this law in other states as well. So do you believe that if Florida makes some revisions, maybe not in a repeal, make some revisions, it could have the same effect nationally to these other states that have also passed the same law?
I believe so. Look at it from this standpoint. John McCain, the standard bearer for the Republican Party 5 years ago when he was the nominee, came out and said, Arizona, we need to look at our laws again, right? The leader of the Republican Party in Arizona, for the most part, said we need to review our laws. He even went further to say we need to do the same thing in Florida. Florida, your laws aren't protecting its citizens properly. I mean, and look how it's applied. I mean, everybody knows different stories, the high-profile stories. The Jordan Davis, who was at a convenience store with his friends, music too loud, the guy shot into the car because he thought he saw a gun. Marissa Alexander, mother, saw her child once, since she gave birth, protecting herself against her partner. And obviously Trayvon Martin.
And of course, Marissa Alexander is sentenced to a minimum of 20 years in prison because of mandatory minimums here in Florida.
Exactly. And so all of those things need to be looked at. And I can go a step further. You talk about the governor. He had a task force that former Lieutenant Governor Jennifer Carroll headed up. He put forth recommendations out of that task force. There was a bill that Senator David Simmons, who was the author of Stand Your Ground back in 2005, put forth a bill. We had no leadership from the governor to say, hear this bill. And so that's why folks like Senator Chris Smith, Senator Dwight Bullard, they're all calling on the governor now to hear the bills. Provide leadership. You have a bully pulpit. You use it for other issues. Use it to keep our children and our communities safe. What's more important?
Stevie Wonder has said that he will not perform in any states that have stand your ground law. Obviously, that includes Florida. Eddie Levert tweeted that he also would honor what Stevie Wonder is doing. Mary said the exact same thing. There's a list of other entertainers. Are you concerned that a potential call for a boycott could dramatically increase and damage the state? You depend a lot on tourism, on those taxes as well, from rental cars and hotel rooms. And so how do you feel about that potential of a boycott picking up that could affect the state of Florida?
So look, in Florida, tourism is our #1 industry. So anytime we have folks saying they don't want to come to Florida, that hurts us, because at the end of the day, when we're in session and we got a $74 billion budget and we're trying to, get funds out to organizations, entities, it's important for us to make sure that we have the revenue coming in. And so as folks say they're boycotting Florida, that hurts us. And so I think that we have an opportunity to, again, call on the governor, ask for leadership, and say, look, not only are you hurting the safety, public safety of folks in your community, in your state, you're also hurting the economic safety of our state. When folks are saying they're not going to come in, and make no doubt about it, that chorus can get louder. Either we try and suppress it now and try and control it, or we look at it and say, oh, it won't impact us. And then 5 months from now, when another conference is thinking about coming to Florida, or another entertainer is thinking about coming to Florida, they just go somewhere else.
If anyone want to look at the impact of that, when Miami, there was a belief that the city of Miami greatly disrespected Nelson Mandela when he made his trip to the United States after he was released from prison. Miami lost a significant amount of money from folks who refused to bring their conventions to the city as a result of the treatment of Nelson Mandela, and that went on for a long period of time, so it certainly has an impact. Earlier you talked about Alec, and I've been asked that by folks, has the Trayvon Martin case resulted in anything significant? First off, the fact that we are having a discussion on Stand Your Ground. Also in 2012, that was the first year that a particular state did not pass a Stand Your Ground law. That sort of stopped that. But it also shone a light on Alec, this group most folks had never heard of. But they have significant power. For the folks who don't know what Alec is, explain it to them, and also, what did you learn about the group that you did not know even existed?
Well, so Alec is the American Legislative Exchange Council, or I think that's what the C stands for. They are a group of individuals that work with primarily conservative lawmakers around the country to promote and pass legislation such as, obviously Stand Your Ground, other issues that—
Voter ID bills.
Voter ID, voter suppression bills. Matter of fact, the voter suppression bill that really galvanized the state of Florida really to get behind and coming out and voting in 2012 was a byproduct of an Alec bill that the same person who sponsored that bill also was a sponsor of the Stand Your Ground bill.
Now, am I correct also that once they begin to look at Alec's role, that they've discovered that in some places the language Alec wrote in memos was actually copy and pasted right into the bill, and Alec's name was on there as well? They weren't even smart enough to delete their name from it?
So yes, there was an actual situation that occurred with a lawmaker here in Florida. They took the bill from Alec, submitted it to bill drafting. In that bill, there was the word American Legislative Council, or Alec, in the bill, as the draft, saying this is kind of draft legislation. And we get that from time to time on both sides, saying, look, this has worked in Maine, this has worked in Vermont.
Yeah, but you don't copy and paste.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
Now
we learned that at Florida A&M. You at least kind of pull back, before you hit send. But obviously they didn't go to FAMU.
But ALEC was established not as really a political organization. It really was supposed to be a business group assisting with tax policy. All of a sudden, you have major corporations who are funding ALEC, and then as a result, folks begin to protest and they begin to pull back once people begin to realize who the Shattered group really was about.
You got the Koch brothers who are engaged, and this is just a net, if you will, of organizations like the Heritage Foundation, ALEC, the RGA, the Republican Governors Association, all of them kind of working in unison because I think, and let's be honest about it, I think once President Obama got elected, they had to step up their game, right? You didn't hear a lot about them before 2008. But once the president was elected, they said, oh no, we got to change this. We can't let this happen again. And so you started seeing more bills in legislatures around the country that either tried to send a memorial to Congress, which really doesn't do anything, against Obamacare. You saw groups like ALEC starting to attack the stimulus. So these are all those organizations that are in the background that are now starting to come to the front because we know where it's coming from because of situations like the bill that got sent in with ALEC's name in it. So we know that they're there and we know what they're trying to do.
So what's next? Is there a timetable where you hope there might be a special session, potentially next 2 weeks, month, 2 months?
I will tell you, taking the politics out of it, right? I will tell you that here in Florida, our speaker, Will Weatherford, is someone that at least you have a dialogue with. You can open the channels of communication. And I think he sees what's going on. I think he's realized that there's some concerns. I think what he wants to do now is get all the facts from all those individuals, all the law enforcement community saying, hold up, what can we do differently? Separate from jury instructions, separate from the number of people on a jury panel, what can we do to fix the law? And so we have a hope that he is willing to hear that, and hopefully he can provide leadership where there has been none. I mean,
has it surprised you though that you've seen more focus put on individuals protesting, calling for a repeal or revisions, and not enough on those law enforcement officials who typically, when they speak, politicians listen? Are you surprised with that level of coverage that more hasn't been put on them as opposed to protesters?
Well, I think now they're going to start coming. They're going to start coming out. They've come out, and some of them, have been not against it. Some have been neutral. The Florida Sheriff's Association, as an organization, was neutral, right? Some very high-level sheriffs around the state said, "This does not help us," and so I think they're going to come to the forefront. I think the speaker's call in his letter, his article in the Tampa Bay Times here recently, will bring those folks together to have that discussion. He and we spoke this weekend while I was in Washington, D.C., ahead of the Voting Rights Act meeting with the president. The speaker and we spoke, and he kind of alluded to the fact that I need to hear more factual information from those who are on the ground. Mm-hmm. And so I think they will give him that, and hopefully we will be the first in the country to at least reform our stand your ground laws. We couldn't get the leadership from the governor's office. I think hopefully we'll get it from the speaker's office.
All right, I want to take some questions. I know we're going to improvise. The producers are probably freaking out backstage, but they'll be okay. If you got a question, stand up, and let's see your question right here. Second row, stand up, please. Name, where you're from.
I'm from LA. I want to know why is there so much talk about the stand your ground law when George Zimmerman wasn't tried based on the stand your ground law?
Okay. Her question was, why is there so much discussion about the stand your ground law? George Zimmerman was not tried on that law. Your response, and then I also have a response.
So real quick, the initial reason why this got so much national attention was because the Sanford police were confused on how to apply the law itself, and that's why he wasn't arrested early on. Ben Crump, the attorney who lives in my district, good friend, was on the phone with me saying, Alan, we got to do something about Stand Your Ground before it hit CNN, before it hit all the mainstream newspapers, or even before anyone else knew about it. He was telling me that we had to fix Stand Your Ground because the police there could not apply it correctly. The police and the prosecution in Jacksonville, Marissa Alexander, applied it completely differently. And if you want to talk about the NRA and those folks, they should be championing what Marissa Alexander did, because that's what Stand Your Ground is supposed to do. She felt her life was threatened in her castle, and she tried to protect herself and her family. And so that's why it was not part of the jury, it was not part of the trial, but it was part of the jury instructions.
But as journalists, though, there's a distinction, though. Stand Your Ground was a part of the trial, though. The defense did not use it in the trial, but in the jury instructions, which the prosecution and the defense both agreed to, Stand Your Ground was a part of the jury instructions. The reason this is significant is because Zimmerman was found not guilty, there's the potential that he now has immunity from a civil proceeding as a result. The family is considering filing a civil suit. The problem there is the Stand Your Ground law in Florida says that if that person is granted immunity, they cannot have anyone come after them legally. And if Trayvon Martin's family goes after him and it's determined that he has immunity as a result of that being included in jury instructions, they could have to pay his legal fees. And so that's how significant the law is. It goes beyond simply invoking Stand Your Ground. It also gives you immunity from any future legal proceedings.
Correct.
Next question right here.
Can you give us a little history? 2005, when it passed, how did it pass? And did African-American legislators also vote for the bill? What's the background of Stand Your Ground?
Question, background, Stand Your Ground law passed in 2005. Who voted against it? Were African-American legislators against the bill?
Senator Chris Smith, who was then a House member in the Florida House, voted against it, who is now trying to reform it. But there were some African-American lawmakers, both in the House and the Senate, who voted for it. In the Senate, it passed, I think, 39-1. In the House, so we had, I think, 1 vote no. In the House, they had more members of the Florida Conference of Black State Legislators who voted for it. Because and the reason why, and this is why sometimes these little small bills that come across our desk, you think nothing of it, was because it said, look, we're going to defend yourself. And a lot of the cases that were brought up were individuals who were out at, say, for example, at a movie or at a club or what have you, and someone tries to harm them. Instead of trying to retreat, if they have some kind of deadly force or equal force, they can apply it. And so I think that's what the argument was back then.
So when the bill was passed, the purpose was to extend the castle doctrine, which means that you can protect yourself on your own property, in your own home. This took it where you now can protect yourself anywhere at any time, and you had no duty to retreat.
Correct.
So it was and what you're saying is when it came up, it was presented as a safety measure as opposed to what it is now.
Correct.
All right. One more question here, real quick. Okay, I need a question.
The question is, why don't you try to just make some revisions to it instead of trying to get rid of the whole thing?
Okay.
Aspects of it that do work.
His question was, he's against an outright repeal of the law, try to make some revisions. Actually, he's already actually answered the question. He said that there likely won't be a repeal. They are trying to make the revisions, but you got to call a special session first to get the revisions. So they're trying to get the special session. Okay? Representative Alan Williams, we certainly appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Go FAMU.
All right, folks. Voice of God, roll tape.